Today, Stuart Taylor joins me, who is most recently at Dundee, but has been helping out as the assistant manager at Ipswich, Wolves, just to name a few. And Stuart, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Happy for the invite. Delighted to be on here.
Thank you very much. So do you want to start us off then with your early days playing football? What was it like growing up for you?
Basically every day, like most kids, you're on the park playing football with your friends and family and stuff like that. So pretty much every single day it would be myself and my brother, Matt. We'd be playing football and throwing in a couple of names. Naveed from Still Game, he'd be one of the ones, that would be up the park. Sanjeev Kohli, we'd all be playing at the top of the pitch playing football, and that continued on, with the local side, West Park. And then I moved on to Celtic Boys Club and then signed for St Mirren.
And what was it like to be in Scotland at the time? Was football like a big sport there? Because obviously now it is, but back in the day?
Yeah, it always has been, especially in the west of Scotland and Glasgow. People talk about rugby and cricket, but none of them are to be seen really in the west of Scotland. You'll find spells in the west end of Glasgow. The private schools will have rugby. We've got a rugby pitch out where I stay, but mostly all the kids are playing football.
St Mirren was your first major club that you played for. What was that like to make an appearance for them? Because they are one of the bigger clubs in Scotland.
Yeah, it was good. I was at St Mirren at a great time when we had two ex-Barcelona players, and Steve Archibald and Victor Munoz. They played alongside Paul Lambert was there, and guys like Kenny McDowell, Campbell Money, Norm McWhirter. So it was great for me because they were proper professionals. They had real good experiences and high standards. And again, I was fortunate that I built up a really good relationship with Steve Archibald and Victor Munoz. And they took me under their wing and really gave me a great education on not just football but life as well, and also the business side of football as well. So it was great to have that experience, knowledge, information at first hand. And again, fortunate enough that I've kept in touch with them to this day. And even through my coaching management career, they were there and helped us through that as well. And I was always there for advice.
You were there as a teenager, which is no easy feat. What was it like to adjust into the squad being so young?
Yeah, obviously it was tough, it was demanding, but I remember having a run-in with one of the experienced players where I caught him late, and then he came after me, and it was one of those ones where you had to deal with it, because back then it was tough. It was a tough upbringing, but it was the right one. It was the right one in the sense that you had to learn your lessons, you had to learn them quick. If you didn't, you were in trouble. And I'm not just going in that sense where I went in late in the tackle and he came after me, but in every sense, it was demanding. If you didn't, work your corner, if you didn't do what you're supposed to have been doing, you were told about it, and it made you mentally tough as well, which is really, really important in any sport. So it was a fantastic upbringing. You
left St Mirren after 6 years. How did that come to an end?
It was after 8 years, to be honest with you. I was at the time. It was the Bosman ruling. You could go over 24, you could leave your club. I was 23 and a half. It was the end of the season, and I'd been signing month to month all season. And there was a couple of clubs interested in us, and a couple of clubs had put offers in, but the manager at the time had refused them all, which is the club's his decision. And I had a good relationship with the owner, and he sat down with me at the end of the season and said, "Look, you've been signing month to month all year. Your birthday's in November, which is a couple of months away. We know you're going to leave then. We have to prepare for the full season." And I said, "I totally understand that." So I left on a free contract. They were kind enough to do that, and I left and I went to Airdrie, who had big things going at the time. They'd moved into their new stadium, and Alan McDonald was the manager, and they had some great experienced players in Kenny Black, Sandy Stewart, where they'd always get into the Scottish Cup semi-finals or the finals, and they were always pushing for promotion as well. So I went and I left to Airdrie.
And I believe there was some problems off the pitch, right? The club ultimately became liquidated in 2002.
Yeah. that was tough times. It was sad times as well, because Airdrie's a fantastic football club, and it's got passionate supporters, and even now, thankfully, they started back up again. And I go back and I watch their games, and I do question and answers and stuff like that, because it's great to be associated with I call them a proper football club. So it was good, but they were tough times where you were turning up for training, you didn't know if you were going to get in, doors were locked, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, tough times, but we got through it. Went through different owners as well. And Steve Archibald actually came with a consortium and tried to buy the club, but tried his hardest and it just didn't happen. So he'd brought over a lot of Spanish players, and again, built good relationships with them and still friends with them. So it was a great time, even although it was tough. He made the most of it.
So you went to Ireland after that, which is, it's local enough, but it's not halfway across the world. What was it like to go there to Drugger United? Obviously, one of the more reputable clubs in the country.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it was probably one of those ones, because I was nominated to be the spokesman through all the troubles for the players. So all the administration that we went through at Airdrie, I was doing all the press and the media and contacting different people and basically speaking on behalf of the players. So there was lots of phone calls, there was lots of press stuff, and it was probably one of those ones where I thought, I had a couple of offers to stay in Scotland, and I thought it was a good one to go and try and experience something different and get away from all that. And that's the reason why I went to Ireland, and it was an absolutely fantastic experience. Ireland's always got a lot of good young players coming through, and at the time, they had a lot. So I went over there and I played. It was a season. It was a transition season where they went into summer football. So I went from June to January, and I came straight back and went to Falkirk and finished off the half of the season there and won league at Falkirk to get promoted. But the club didn't go up, so that's the reason why that spell was so short. But again, great experience, met some really good friends, and it actually stood me in good stead for when I took my first manager's job over in Ireland.
Well, do you ever look back on your career and wish that you went abroad as a player?
I had a couple of opportunities to go abroad, that's probably my biggest one. 2 opportunities to go to Spain, and I didn't take them. One, I was too young. My mum and my dad, well, it was my mum really, she said, you're 16, you're too young. And the other one was 29. But I didn't take them up, and I try not to regret things. Decisions are there to be made, and you have to sit down and think about it. And I always think it's not just about me; it's about family, it's about football, it's what am I going to learn, and how's it going to develop me going forward. And I made the decision to stay, and I knew it was always going to be a tough one. But the reason why I stayed was it was an opportunity to go and work with a manager I'd always wanted to work with. I knew I would learn from in terms of the coaching side of things. And I always knew I wanted to go into coaching, managing later on in my career. So the reason why I made the decision to stay in Scotland was purely for that, to learn under his managerial skills and see what I could learn from him.
Well, I suppose later on you ended up going to Qatar, but before we speak about the managerial side, you went to Partick Thistle, obviously in Scotland again. So you've returned back home. Was it quite nice to go back home?
Yeah, came back, as I said. I went to Falkirk and we won the league at Falkirk. Falkirk didn't go up, and we had again some great players like Owen Coyle, Lee Miller, Mark Kerr, John Hughes, but we didn't go up. So it was probably one of those ones where I had an opportunity to go in the Premier League. Probably one of the decisions I shouldn't have. It was probably the wrong decision I made. But we do things and we learn from things, and I should have stayed at Falkirk. A really good club, and they were doing the right things at the time.
In your career, because obviously there's still a few more clubs that followed after this, did you ever feel like you were always just trying to find your feet because you were moving between so many clubs?
No, because I was at St Mirren for so long. I was at St Mirren for 8 years. I was at Airdrie for 4 or 5 years. And I went to, obviously, Ireland because it was always going to be that short spell because of everything that happened at Airdrie. I went to Falkirk. I should have stayed at Falkirk. And I think after that, I bounced about because I had so much joy and success and happiness and fulfilment in terms of what I was learning at football clubs. I never really found that again since then. And that was something that bothered me because I always wanted to learn everywhere I went. I always wanted to learn something. And and a couple of injuries as well. I'd picked up quite a few injuries, which went against me as well.
You went to St Johnstone after that, which again is another big club in Scotland. What was that like to be around that club? Because obviously they were on the up then and they were doing quite well.
Yeah, big thing for me was leaving Partick Thistle and going to because St Johnstone came in for me at the start of that season when I left Falkirk, and Billy Stark was the manager, and that was solely the only reason why I went to St Johnstone was because Billy Stark was there. I remember Billy Stark being a Celtic player, and he was similar to myself in terms of box to box, getting in the box, scoring goals. You know, the presence, the tall. You know, he was tall and he got about. So I wanted to go there to learn from under him, and I was delighted I did that. But Billy Stark left at the end of the season, so my contract was up, and it was time for me to go as well because that was the reason why I went there.
As you started to get to the back end of your career, obviously you mentioned before you wanted to be a manager, be in the coaching game. Did you want to go to these clubs, obviously with Stark as well, to just look at what the managers' philosophies are and just to see what different clubs and how they do different things?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That was always in the back of my head since I was a kid at St Mirren. After like Steve Archibald and Victor Munoz talking to me about, you know, about your career and have a plan and, you know, how you want to go about to look after yourself and all the different exercises and feeding habits, eating habits and different things that they gave me. It was always in my mindset of how am I going to get better? What do I want to achieve? Where do I want to be? And what do I want to do? There was all those different, it was like a strategy that was put in place of how my career was going to look. So knowing from about, I would say about 18, I knew that I wanted to go into coaching and managing because I was working under a manager at the time that he was doing a little bit of coaching. I thought, I like this. I want to do this when, you know, when I'm older, and I want to know more about it and I want to go a wee bit more detailed with it. And that was the reason very, very early on, I knew I wanted to go into coaching. So it was always in my mindset every time I went to a football club, what am I going to learn from the manager? What am I going to learn from his backroom team staff? What sort of players has he got there that I can work with, but also learn from?
Ross County came up next. What was the best memory in the year that you spent there?
The best memory there was working under Alex Smith. That was the reason why I didn't take the Spanish option. Was because he was highly regarded in Scotland. He did all the SFA coaching qualifications. He was very intelligent tactically, but also I was told he had a really good way about dealing with people. His emotional intelligence, his leadership skills, his man management was second to none. I was told that off a couple of players. So all through my career, I was always heading my line of I would like to work with him, I'd like to work under him and see what it is that he's got that's different that I can learn from. And that was the reason for me not going to Spain and choosing to go to stay in Scotland. So that was probably that was definitely the reason why I joined there. And it was probably the highlight as well of the time that he worked there and what I learned from him.
How long did it take you to decide that the Spanish option wasn't the right thing for you? Because by there, it seems that you made your mind up pretty quickly.
There was a lot of conversations with Alex Smith at the time, and he was very forceful of it was the right move for me to go to Ross County. But I always deep down I knew that I wanted to go in for years. I'd always wanted to work for him. Always wanted to go and work in Spain as well, but I think it came down to that one of a new culture. Yeah, I wanted to learn a new culture. I wanted to learn a different way. I wanted to see what it was like over there. But at the same time, I always in my head that it was a learning process. And with that growth mindset is that what can you learn? How much can you learn? And where is it going to take you? Obviously, overpowered the decision to go to Spain.
There was 2 more clubs left in your career, but Hamilton Academy was probably one of the more important ones because you were playing whilst transitioning into the coach that you are today. What was that like to balance 2 things on the plate at once?
Well, the first one I actually did was Airdrie. That's where I started my coaching career. Sandy Stewart signed me at Airdrie, first team coach. I did under 19s as well, but obviously playing at the same time. But in terms of being an assistant and having more responsibilities on the pitch, the training pitch, it was Hamilton, and it was great because we had a really good squad of players with good experienced players, and Mark McLaughlin and Alec Neils and players like that. But they were actually blended with your James McArthurs, your James McCarthy's, your Brian Eastons, the younger ones coming through. So there was a real good mix there. And again, it was good for me to experience that and put my ideas forward and learn as well, because, you know, I'd only been really coaching the season before, and to go in there, and I'd done my A licence at the time because I worked with Billy Reid on the A licence, and that's really how the move came around. It was a great learning curve for me, not just on the training pitch or on the football pitch, but off it as well, you know, in terms of how a club can operate and you know, learn that side of it as well.
So when you were assistant manager at Hamilton, what was your first like proper thoughts to know that you've been promoted to the coaching staff?
In terms of what, sorry?
Like, what was your first thoughts in terms of you're now in this big role, everyone looks up to you?
Yeah, I think that's the way I've always tried to be through playing anyway, was how trying to kind of be that leader within the squad of players. So not really that much different in that sense, but obviously taking on more of the coaching tactics was a big thing, and picking teams and you know, being involved in the implementing training sessions and then you know, planning the training sessions, but you know, then taking them and stuff like that. That's probably the big jump there, and I've got every respect for player managers who do both, because that is tough. But I played probably the first 10, 12 games, and then I had an ankle operation, which kind of effectively finished me. It allowed me to work more on the coaching side of things and being more concentrating on the assistant manager, because we had, you know, with James McArthur and James McCarthy and Alec Neil in the midfield, it wasn't as if we were short of good players. So so it allowed me to go and take that step aside and go and concentrate on the coaching side.
The three notable years that you spent there, the first year you finished 9th and you stayed up in the league. What was the celebrations like around that? Obviously, Hamilton remaining in the top flight.
Yeah, the first year we went there. We won the second tier with the Championship, First Division. It was at the time, but yeah, we won the league, and that was an incredible achievement, because you know, there was big clubs in the league, you know, in particular Dunfermline's, their Dundee's, who massive budgets. But it wasn't just a matter of us winning it was how we won the league. You know, we played some really good football. Obviously, really good players were in the team, but we played some really good football with such a young team. And then once when we get into the SPL, it was that belief of, you know, you're good enough to be here and you know, retain that status, which we did. And then the following season, I think we end up, our target was, you know, we've had that belief of being able to stay in the league. Can we finish top of the bottom section of the league, which obviously there's a split in Scotland. So we done that, and we finished there. So it was a great achievement, you know, in terms of retaining the status, but doing it with confidence and a bit of style and stuff like that. So it was in the manner how we did it was really pleasing for us.
So the second year that you were in the top flight, you finished 7th, as you mentioned there. And then the following season, I think it did definitely go a bit further downhill. You guys got relegated. What was that like to be around that squad that was so high just a couple of seasons before? Yeah,
it was disappointing, obviously, but I think we kind of came away from our identity a little bit. We'd lost James McCarthy, we'd lost Brian Easton, lost quite a lot of the younger ones, the real influential ones, and that took the club, you know, it took the lads quite a bit, and to try and go over that. Obviously, most clubs would struggle with losing the three best players, you know. So it was probably a transition season where it was how we dealt with that. You're looking at obviously an academy about having that conveyor belt of talent. Who's the next one's coming through? And maybe there was just a little bit of a gap in that conveyor belt, where the ones that were coming through just weren't really ready to play week in, week out at that level. But it was a great experience for them. You know, they learned loads when they did come in, and they did very well. So it was just we fell short, that was all.
In 2012, you went to Qatar. What a move that was for you. How did you get offered that? Was that just through the connections that you knew before?
Yeah, it was through the SFA, to be honest with you. I was doing some coach education stuff. At the time, I was doing the tutor work on the I think it was a B licence at the time, and the offer came about from that, and it was myself and there was two other coaches went over, and Went over. It was an experience. It was good. It was learning a different culture totally, it was an enjoyable time.
Obviously, the Qatar 2022 World Cup was putting Qatar in the headlines. What was it like to live there for that year?
It was tough. It was tough. I love the place. Absolutely love the place. We love the people. But it was tough living away from the family. I went over in the June, July, my oldest daughter was 6. My youngest one was like 2, and then my wife was pregnant with my son, so he was born in November, and there was difficulties trying to get back for the birth and things like that. And I thought, I was still living in a hotel and accommodation wasn't ready, so it was how am I going to get my family out? It was all that sort of stuff, and it was tough living away from the family at that time. And fortunate enough, I had an offer to go and manage Limerick as a first team manager, which I took up in the January, and it meant that we were all living together. So the club over in Qatar had a really good relationship with the president and the vice president, and they were very positive and they backed the move, although they wanted me to stay. But I just expressed the fact that being back with the family again was really important for me, which they fully understood.
How do you have to block out all of that outside noise, though, of you wanting to go back home to your family to see them, and then also having to perform to your highest standard when you're coaching the players?
I think it's just that mentality. To be honest with you, it's about you go into that work zone where you're there, you're working, and you do have to block out all the other things. It's like when you say when you're not doing so well, where there's the noise that the supporters or the grumblings, whatever the case may be. You don't hear it because you're so focused in your work and you block out the noise. I'm not saying the family are the noise and it's easy to block them out, but for that 2 hours you're on the pitch, or for that hour and a half of the game, you'll be working probably around about 3-4 hours of it from start to finish. But yeah, you're focused on doing what's right for the football club and what's right for the players, because ultimately you're over there, or you're working away for a reason. You're working away for your family, so you have to be focused and make sure you're switched on, making the right decisions.
And then when you went back, I'd call it to your second home, back to Ireland. You obviously went with your family. Was that one of the priorities, that if you were to go back to anywhere, you'd have to take your family with you?
Yeah, priorities were always my family. And I spoke to the technical director at the time when I was going over to Qatar, and I said to him, look, my family need to come over. And it was no problem, yeah, that'll happen, but it just took too long to happen. But going to Ireland, it was the first thing we spoke about once I accepted everything, all the contract and stuff, and it was about can I get a family home so my family can come over straight away. So it was fantastic. We had probably the best time of our lives, as a family, where I think Ireland had the best summer they'd had in 20 years or something like that. So we were out in we'd a house out in the country with one neighbour, and we still keep in touch with the neighbour. And the kids loved everything about it. My daughter, she was winning competitions in the Irish dancing and all sorts. My other daughter was playing Gaelic football, and it was a fantastic time, and really thoroughly enjoyed the league, enjoyed the area that we lived in Bruff. And still got a lot of good friends that we still keep in touch with.
And even on the pitch as well, in the 2013 year, you did pretty well, 7th mid-table on the top flight return.
Yeah, well, the remit was let's stay in the league, because it was the first time they'd been promoted in 19 years. So they just came up the season before I went. That was the first season back in the league for 19 years, and it was about stability. We went close to breaking a couple of records of the longest run at the start of the season. We'd brought in, I think it was about 8 or 9 debuts from the academy. There was loads of positive things that were happening, and we finished, as you say, 6th, 7th in the league, which was fantastic. It was well above what we expected, but an absolutely fantastic time I had at the football club.
In July of 2014, unfortunately, things went downhill again. The side was struggling, and you ultimately made the decision to resign. Again, with your family taken into everything, was it the best thing overall?
Absolutely, 100%. Went back in the January, and we had cuts to the budget, which was disappointing because it was totally different from what we spoke about the year before, but I understand the financial implications of football and people's businesses. It was disappointing going to the second season with that. But again, we started well, and we were probably aiming again for that mid-table finish. The CEO was fantastic. We worked closely together to try and make things happen, try and bring in good quality younger ones, to help make up for the shortfall in the budget. But it got to the point where I just thought, I've left the club in a great position. My family were, it was the school holidays, and I just thought it was the right time for my family to go back and get them back into school in the UK and Scotland for a new school term. So I had a really good relationship with the CEO and with the owner. Pat was he was brilliant, and I sat down and I spoke to him. I says, look, families, it's coming up to the school term, and I think it's the right thing to move back. And I've done everything I can possibly do. We're in the summer now. It was a summer window where it closes down for 2 weeks, and I think it's probably the best thing for me to take my family back to Scotland. So yeah, that was the thing, and I think I was out I'd left for a couple of days, maybe even 5 days, and obviously got a phone call about another opportunity, which was great.
I suppose, though, sometimes you do probably want to take a step back and maybe book a family holiday away and just relax a tiny bit after the intense season.
No, I know what you mean, but I wasn't in that situation because we were scheduled to finish mid-table. We had a good start to the campaign, and it was just one that was probably a family decision that was made. My wife spoke to me about it, and I spoke about them going back and me staying at Limerick, which is what Pat had suggested, and the CEO had suggested, John suggested as well. And I thought, well, we were over in Qatar, we were away from each other, and it's not something I want to go back to doing again. But I think probably the right thing, family reasons, that was just for coming back to the UK.
You were the under-23 head coach at Aston Villa, which was some time to be there because Jack Grealish was coming through the academy, to name one of the players that was there. What was it like to work with him? What sort of player were you eyeing him up to be?
He was great. He was absolutely fantastic, so focused, so dedicated, so professional for such a young age as well, but ever so talented. People talk about your Brian Laudrups and stuff like that, where they, as if the ball was tied, to their foot. He was exactly the same. People couldn't get the ball off him, but he was well developed as well. So he had a lot of incredible attributes. I remember I was in about a week, 10 days, and the manager had phoned and said, look, we're going away to America. We need a player to come up. And I was like, Jack, there's nobody else that you would think would be ahead of him. We had a lot of good young players in there. We had a lot of good talented young players, but he was ahead. He went out on loan to Notts County, which I thought was a great move from the club. Put him out and let him play men's football, which is another step ahead of the 23s, and I thought it was the right thing for him to do. By all accounts, he'd kicked on quite a lot when he was out, but although he went up with the first team for that trip, he did come back down, and he was always up and down and from the first team to the 23s because he was having to catch up in his minutes of play. So maybe he'd be on the bench with the first team, and then he would come back and play 60, 70 minutes, sometimes 90 minutes. But absolute fantastic talent, absolute unbelievable talent. But again, as I say, I was fortunate there was quite a few talented players in there, your Daniel Johnsons, your Callum Robinsons, your Lewis Kinsellas, there was quite a few.
Would you have expected Jack Grealish's career to go the way that it has? Obviously, Premier League champion, and he's done a really, really good job.
Absolutely. You see a talent at such a young age, and again, I was fortunate. I've mentioned James MacArthur, previously, where you go, you can just see it in people where you say they've not only do they have the talent to kick on, they've also got the attitude, they've also got the personality, they've also got the character, they've also got the professionalism. And that's something that the three of them had, was that ability to kick on and deal with the challenges that you give them. And that's what they did. They took the challenges head on, and they just achieved everything that was in front of them.
Wolverhampton Wanderers, you were the assistant manager under Paul Lambert. What was that like to be welcomed into Wolves?
Incredible club. Absolutely fantastic club with some really, really good people. And Kevin Thelwell was a sporting director. You got Rob Edwards was also assistant coach there as well. But even the background team staff and Phil Boardman and down Matt Wignall, all down at the masseurs and the sports scientists and stuff, physios. It was a great club, and you could tell they'd been there for a few years. So you could tell that there was a real togetherness. There was a real desire for the club to succeed. There was no individualness about it at all, in terms of people looking after themselves and making sure that their own wee corners right. And there was none of that. Everybody was there to help each other out. And everybody was there to strive to improve and make the club better, which was a great culture, a great environment to be part of.
We've now seen, obviously, Wolves in the Premier League and in the Europa League a couple of years back. What's it been like to be sitting on the side watching Wolves and see how they've progressed over the years?
Oh, they've progressed massively, and I think finances has been a big part of that. And after we left, there was a lot of the Portuguese players come over, and we had Alvin Cavaleiro and Helder Costa, and so we had a lot of them, and it was great to work with those lads. They were real talent, and then they kicked on again and brought more over, and but still there was the basis of your Dave Edwards and lads that knew the club and knew it was required to go and win that league, and so as much as the talent was there from the foreign lads coming in, it was also there from the British lads as well.
What is it about Wolves and having to sign Portuguese players?
I don't know, you'd need to ask them that, but I think at the time it was obviously the manager that came in after us was Portuguese, so he obviously knew the market and saw that there was a talent there that could come over and give success to not just Wolves but to England.
Because I always thought from the outside looking in that it was something from the board, that the board wanted to sign Portuguese players.
Well, they obviously had a link with the agent as well that was Portuguese, and I guess that's where a lot of his players would be based from. As much as they were Portuguese, they maybe came from different countries. I think Ivan came from, I think it was Spain, Deportivo, I think it might have been. So yeah, he'd moved them around the country. So I think it was more of an agency led as well.
Liverpool away. What a game that was. 2-1 win for Wolverhampton Wanderers. In the build-up to that game, going to Anfield, travelling up north, what was that all like?
It was great because I was obviously a Liverpool supporter when I was younger. So when the draw came out, I thought, oh, fantastic. Probably the selfish point of view, do you know what I mean? But I was like, fantastic, because we'd just beaten Stoke at Stoke. And the next draw was Liverpool at Anfield. So I remember going to we watched, it was Liverpool against, I think it was Manchester City, I think it was, it was a European game. I think it was. And we went to go and see the game, and it was myself and the manager, Paul, at the time. And what a standard. What unbelievable. Even though building up to the game, going into the stadium, the way that people treated you was just another level of class. That's the only thing I can say. And just remember really looking forward to the game. And then we went, to the game, stayed overnight, blah, 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 blah. A great stadium. Pitch was unbelievable. But to win 2-1 was unbelievable. It was a great achievement. The players were fantastic. The players are absolutely brilliant. The game plan to a T. And I always remember afterwards going over to the Wolves supporters who were phenomenal. And actually, my wife, she sent us the video of it, and it keeps coming up in your memory every now and then on the phone, and you sit and you watch. But brilliant. I've been fortunate enough. I've been there twice now, Anfield, and I've been unbeaten. So it's a nice thing to say.
How did you outclass Jurgen Klopp? Because that is some feat.
Oh, I didn't. The players did. The manager did. Yeah, because the thing is, they actually had a good team. You know, it wasn't as if they put out, you know, like young players or, you know, whatever, but they actually had a really, really strong team. But we had a young keeper in at the time as well. And you're saying, just go and give it your lot. He's a really, really good players, and he's experienced, and you know, he's your qualities that's enough to go and win a game of football on a given day anywhere. And they did that. They proved that they were good enough. They had the qualities, and to win that at Anfield was fantastic, absolutely brilliant. A memory you'll remember forever.
Of course. And I suppose when you're a player, you want to go and play against these big sides, swap the shirts. Are you the kind of guy that likes your players to swap shirts?
It doesn't bother me. You know, it's experiences you look back on, and it's probably one thing I wish I'd have got obviously being a Liverpool supporter, I wish I'd have got a top after the game. But when you're in the coaching side, you're doing your job, and then before the game's finished and you're away, and then you go in and see the manager after the game, and you're kind of like going, you know, I should have brought a top back for my son, kind of for me, but you know, I should have brought a top back. But I did think about doing it the second time, but again, you're in doing your work and you forget about all that. No, the experiences are there, and I've got the game, you know, there to go and watch whenever I want to go and watch it. So.
You then took this step up yourself to go and be assistant manager in the Premier League in a Stoke side that was definitely struggling nonetheless, and ultimately got relegated that year. But what was the aim to go into that side so late on in the season?
It was the manager phoned us and said to us, look, an opportunity going to Stoke. You know, we can go in and turn this around, and you know, he had a real belief that he could do it, and we weren't far away, and obviously I bought into that as well, and we gave it a right good go. But again, a really good club with good players, good staff. You know, working closely with guys like Tony Scholes and Mark Cartwright, you know, were a great learning curve for me. You know, we went in and we got a chance to go and work with some quality players, and we gave it a good go, and again picked up good points along the way. And Liverpool away, I got a draw, and but it just, and at the end of the season, it just wasn't enough. That we fell short, but we gave it our best shot. That was it. That was the big thing to it, and ultimately we fell just short a little bit.
Well, I suppose on the 5th of May is when relegation happened, so it's decently late on in the season. But what's it like to be relegated from the Premier League, surroundings and the dressing room itself?
Yeah, it was disappointing, obviously, to be relegated from any league, but obviously that's the pinnacle, that's the top level, and you know, massively disappointing. There was, you know, a lot of, you know, professional lads in there, whether it be players or whether it be coaches, or and everybody took it really, really, really badly. But you know, again, you've got to go and pick yourself up, dust yourself down, and go on again. And some lads moved on, some lads stayed. But yeah, it was a shame, because it was a great squad of players, and it was a shame that we couldn't keep up, because Mr. Coates was a fantastic owner and great to work under.
You then went to Ipswich Town in 3 years. In the Championship, that was the first year in 2018, is when you guys walked into the door. And unfortunately, you couldn't recover after a slow start from the previous manager. And again, that was relegation to League One. Yeah,
we were hoping that we could have added a few players in the January. But Ipswich were a massive club, but probably a little bit of apathy there. You know, there was a little bit of the club had been down there for so long, and you know, and I think Mick McCarthy done a fantastic job there, and we're hoping to try and kind of pick things back up from that again. But you know, you look at Ipswich have come in, you know, they get their new owners now, and they've really kicked on, and it's great to see them in the Premiership. Obviously they came back down again, unfortunately, but you know, you see the supporters coming out, you know, one club town, and you see the supporters coming out in their droves and getting right behind them, which is something that I remember the manager going down at first, and he says we need to get the supporters going. That's the first thing we need to do. And he worked closely with a small group of supporters and got them going. But yeah, it was a shame things didn't work out.
And I suppose that was during COVID as well. So the second time you were there, second season, that was been the back end of it, definitely in the COVID times. What was that like? How did the transition go?
It was tough. It was strange. It was it was new for everybody, and you use your contacts. And I was speaking to people that were working at clubs, in the Premiership, and how were they dealing with it, and it was trial and error for everybody. But we got through it. We got through it with strong staff and strong group of players that they listened and they took everyone on board. But starting back that following season was strange, because it was a real challenge for coaches, because you had to work in smaller numbers and smaller groups. It was trying to get everybody in, getting their checks, getting distance and all that sort of stuff, and it was a real challenge. But thankfully we get through it without too many people falling down with COVID.
Well, in the third season that you were there, you finished in 9th, departing in February. Do you believe that if COVID wasn't the thing, then you could have really pushed on and gone for a playoff push?
It's hard to say, isn't it? It'd be easy to turn and say, of course, yeah, we'd have won it and blah, 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 blah. But I just think it made it difficult for everybody. It made it a real challenge for every club and every player, and every member of staff and managers, throughout all the clubs in the UK, in fact, the world. But it was certainly an experience that we can learn from, and that certainly we wouldn't want to go back to. That's for sure.
Well, you went back home. You went to Hamilton once again to be the head coach. Do you prefer to be an assistant or the head coach?
Everybody asks me that question, but I'm more about the club that I'm working for and the people that I'm working with. Titles are, they're titles, but I would rather be that way, where big thing for me is, what sort of club am I working for? What's their ambitions? Where do they want to be? Where are they now? And what sort of people do you have working for? Can I learn from these people? Is there a good environment? Is there a good culture at the football club? They're the big things for me. I'm comfortable going in as a manager, an assistant manager, or anything else. It's just really making sure that we're going at the right environment, the right culture, and how can I improve that football club, and how can I improve the people around there as well.
You were at Hamilton for the second stint, just under 1 year. How would you sum up that time as the head coach there?
Successful, really. I went in, and the club was joint bottom of the league, and it was about changing the culture. My remit was to stay in the league when I took over the job. My remit was to stay in the league, bring through some younger players, change the culture, and try and get a run in the league where we're getting up as far as you can, and then we'll look to go and kick on the following season. So we finished short of playoff for going up. We were the second youngest team in the league. I think we finished second top for your expected goals, and we were top for second top for possession as well. So there was big jumps. There was real progression in the season as well. So I was happy with that, but obviously disappointed that we didn't get that promotion playoff. But it was mentioned to me before I started that there was no expectation of that anyway, and that was by the chairman. So it was good that took that pressure off, and you the realisation of realistically what we're going to achieve, what you're looking to set out, something you always look to do when you go into a football club. What's expectancy, and what success, and success was like staying in the league, but can you do it with a bit of ease, and just try and get a way of playing again, and change the culture, and just bring through the younger ones. So we did that.
We know managers across the grid don't have that much time to make an impact at the clubs. So you were obviously at these clubs for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, really at most. So do you really prioritise the short term, or are you really trying to push on and be one of the main managers for a long time?
Yeah, big thing for me is about leaving a legacy. I've always said that about making an impact and leaving the club in a better place when you first got it. And I think I've done that. And, everywhere I've been, and just making sure that you do your best, you improve the place, the players, the club, and just try and progress every day. And it's something that I've always said to do, and I think my decision to leave, when we were talking about Hamilton there, my decision to leave there was that we got it in a better place, and ultimately at the time, you know yourself when it's time to leave, and I was happy with that, and we achieved what we set out to do.
In the year that you left and then joined Dundee, there was a year in between. What did you actually do in that year?
A lot of CPD, a lot of learning. I actually started my masters. I left Hamilton and I spoke to the VSI, who run the Sporting Directors Masters course. So I started that, and it was a 2-year course. I did that, which I passed. I just graduated last October. So it was great to get that on board, because it's something that I've always looked at, not just, as I said to you before earlier on, about the financial aspect of football. I'm very aware of that and I respect that, and it's important that you do as a football coach, manager. But it was about building strategies and structures and implementing them. What's the best way to go about it? And the leadership aspect of football has always interested me. I've always been fascinated with that, and it was something I did earlier on in my career. I did a HNC in business, along with my B licence and my A licence. But after doing my pro licence, and I did my LMA diploma down in London with the LMA, the only thing I had left to do was the masters course that came up, and I felt that was the time to do it. I was doing a lot of SFA had asked me to come in and do the coach education again, the tutor work I did the B, the A, the C, and the pro licence as well with them. So it was a good combination with doing that. Although I wasn't doing what I really wanted to do, was being full time at a football club. I thought it was a good time to take that step back and challenge myself in a different way, because education at school, I was never academic, because I always knew what I wanted to go into was playing football. So it was a challenge for me to try and achieve a master's degree, which I'd never have thought would have been something that would have been possible. But although in the back of my head, I was always saying I would love to do that, because you see people, family graduate, and you go, I'd love to do that. I'd love to be able to achieve that. And I always say, don't confuse education with intelligence. And I think and I say to my kids as well, that once you find something that you're really interested in, you'll put your heart and your soul into it, and you'll give it everything you've got, and you will do well with it, because there's an interest there. For reading books, for me, it's never been something that I've done when I was younger. But if it's about something that I'm interested in, something I know a little bit about and I want to know more, you sit down and you read it. So through that year, I did that, and I did some stuff for people in terms of watching games, scouting. I always believe in keeping your pencil sharpened, and I would do club visits. I was over in Spain and went to go and do a couple of club visits. I went to Benfica twice, and that's an incredible setup over there. So I'll just get myself busy, get my pencil sharpened with doing all that.
The first year that you were at Dundee for 1 of 2 years, it was quite a positive year again. It seems to me that you're very good at, when a club comes up, you're quite good at stabilising them. And it was a top 6 finish, which was probably not on the cards.
Absolutely. It was like the Hamilton one, where you say you're punching above your weight. And when we went into the SPL there, and the Limerick one as well, we punched above our weight. We went in and there was 3 signed players. So there was a lot of recruitment needing done very, very quickly. There was a lot of work needing done in terms of implementing a philosophy, a coaching style, a playing style, and we did that, and we did it really well with a great group of players who were very receptive. And a lot of those players were loan players, like say your own Becks, your Alaki Boatengs, and Bakayokos and stuff like that. So we lost them at the end of the season. So again, it was, I call it a recruitment strategy, where you should be thinking ahead, and you should be signing ahead and leaving yourself in a better position. And it was about having to go and bring in new players again the following season. And you have to build that. You have to build that. Where again this season we came in and we started the season well. I suppose when you look back and when you reflect on it, it was a good season. We sustained our SPL status, which I think is the first time someone told us. It was the first time in 17 years that they've done 3 years in a row in the SPL, but 2 quarter-finals, sold Luke McCowan on to Celtic, Lyle Cameron moves on to Rangers, Josh Mulligan moves on to Hibs. So there was a lot of progression again, and a lot of targets had been hit in terms of player progression, player development, success with the team in terms of the league campaign, but also cup campaigns as well. So it was 2 good seasons. The first one was fantastic, obviously. Second season, there was success there as well.
With the success in the second season, obviously, regardless of that success, unfortunately, it ended at Dundee. What was the sort of communication like after that success did occur?
In terms of what, sorry?
So, like off the pitch, the coaching staff, the manager, everyone left. What was that sort of like after you've had that success?
Listen, it's disappointing. It's disappointing, but it's football, you respect people's decisions, and I always say you look back and you reflect, and what can you do better? What did we do well? And we've had conversations about it, and it was a tough summer, but. It's football that you learn, you move on from, and as I said to you, you learn, but it's what can you do better in your next job, and you reflect and you move on from it, and you learn from it.
And Stuart, the last thing from me would be, what's upcoming for you? Are you looking to get into management very quickly?
Yeah, I'm looking to get back in, obviously. I don't like being out of work. When I'm out of work, I'm always doing, trying to do as much as I possibly can in terms of watching games, going on and visiting football clubs, speaking to managers, speaking to coaches, speaking to sporting directors, technical directors, scouts, and finding out, what the new trend is, what's on the horizon, what's, the next football playing style, and who's recruiting in a certain way, why are they recruiting that way. So I've got friends in Spain that I keep in touch with that are involved in football clubs, and obviously friends down south in England and here in Scotland, and I'll always try and phone around and just keep my pencil sharpened for ready when I do go back in again.
Well, Stuart, I really appreciate you joining me today. All the best with whatever comes up, and I'll be supporting you all the way.
Thank you very much for your time, Jamie, and thank you very much for asking me on.